one thing I hear in what you're saying is the importance of someone, for example, who's working for the cleanup of San Francisco Bay, to ask the spirits of the waters what would be helpful, or for the trees to be open to hearing from the spirits of the trees what would be helpful.
That's correct. So wrong thing to define ourselves as redeemers, who's bringing salvation to an otherwise beleaguered and beaten up state of a situation. This is just self-serving. It's another grandiose way. I hear people talk about, let's save the earth. Who messed up the earth to begin with? And so in order to come across like you are a redeemer, you first have to make a mess somewhere while people are not looking. And then you turn around and walk in there with all the press looking so that you look like, you're the one who is bringing salvation to a dying place. No, it is important to listen. It's important to listen. It's important also to recognize through grief, the expression of it. Showing how sorry you are. That somehow people who are associated with you were dead enough to do this. And describe yourself as a person who's just showing up. Showing up not knowing what to do, but at least you're there. You see? Because then, and maybe at that time, you could begin to hear some voices that are telling you, okay, so just clean this one up, put some tobacco over there, and so on and so forth. You see, it might translate in your consciousness as, you just have the instinct and you felt called to do this. But either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You didn't begin by drawing a map of the choreography of your behavior when you get there. Then it's not a ritual. It's some kind of predictable series of choreographic moment. But the one in which you wholeheartedly submit to the vibration of the space, acknowledging your own mediocrity, really, with respect to it. The moment you do that, the more likely you might wake up some attention. You might begin to be the spotlight of certain kind of attention that could result in the beginning of a certain kind of healing. That's the most I can say about this.
Malidoma, can you share a little more about how the Dagara tradition understands the ideal relationship of human beings to the rest of the natural world? Like, what is the role of conscious adult human beings in the natural order here?
It seems like that's part of what we've been talking about so far. I mean, more specifically, it might be a good idea to understand that from the point of view of Dagara, there is a certain kind of hierarchy of consciousness that places the higher consciousness as the plant, the natural world. There's the highest consciousness. And the second one being the animal consciousness. That's the second highest. And we, human beings, trailing behind. Of course, that doesn't sound right for, for a normal person who would like to think that they have domesticated the entire world and that it's a manifest destiny, to develop everything. Let's just say this, that our connection with the natural world make us part of the anatomy of the natural world. And if we were to develop a kind of mindset in which we can understand or acknowledge that the world, the plant, the earth, nature was there long before we occurred, it might be again another opportunity for humility to wonder, what is it that makes me not different from the tree I'm looking at? What is the kind of kinship that exists? What are the frequencies that I have lost that could have, if still alive, allowed me to hear the word of the tree as I walked past it. Probably saying, "Hello, how you doing, little one?" Because trees are known to be usually very tall. Look at it. You got to look up. You don't look down. So instead, where I've lived a life so far away from that if by any accident we walk past a redwood who says, "Hello, little one," it will startle the big Jesus out of us, right? And so there's the problem, and there's the diagnostic of the issue right there. In my book of Water and the Spirit, where I relate the story of my own initiation, I mentioned the deep influence gazing at a tree had on me. And what I didn't talk about was the subsequent attitude that I've had whenever I will find myself near a plant, a tree. Anyway, that's not the reason why I'm not a vegetarian. But the basic thing for us to understand is that our distance from community, the crisis of identity intrinsically associated with modernity, and the confusion that is now rampant in the middle of the 21st century, really has a lot to do with, call it the denaturalization of the human psyche. Now I forgot your question, but you got to understand one clear thing, that as long as the gap between us and nature is not reducing itself and is increasing instead, we might be facing a much deeper crisis ahead.
Some people make an assumption, often unconscious, that any spiritual practice worthwhile needs to be serious and somber. Can you speak to the role of play and fun and spontaneity in ritual work?
You got to understand, the other world doesn't know nothing about seriousness. The issue at hand is that any time I've had an encounter with the other world, and I mean that literally. We have little people in my culture that we call contemporary. Every time you meet them, they're playing around. They look like irresponsible people jumping around and finding you rather funny looking, serious. And so it has led me to wonder, where do we inherit this solemn attitude? In fact, associated with the word serious. And I tried to understand that by way of trying to find out whether there is an equivalent in Dagara of the word serious. There is none. There's no word for serious. The closest word to it is literally translated red eye. That's a red eye. And it's even funny. But this is as serious as it gets. Because red eye mean you can't close your eye. You gotta keep it open because you might miss out on something. And so there is a direct connection between ritual and fun and also play. Where does it come from? We can see it in children whose world is all about play and the choreography of it. Why do we grow up and find this rather childish? As if childish is less important than solemn and serious. Have we ever tried to do it more playfully, just to see whether, in fact, there is a greater chance of success than the serious? So, with all of this, the bottom line is that the further away from the sacred a culture grows, the more serious and solemn it becomes. Yes, it simply suggests that the closer a community or a people get to the sacred, the more access to joy, to playfulness, and to a lot of laughter, you know. And so it's up to us to choose. You know, modern culture seems to understand that. Corporate world even understand that. That's why they have such a time as happy hour. You know, every day between 4 and 5 is a happy hour, where the drinks are cheaper, you know. But it's between 4 and 5. After that, everybody back to serious. You understand? We've got a problem with that. See, the playfulness associated with work has been shrunk so much down to an artificial happy hour that you cannot even be playful or come close to happiness without the help of a couple of glasses of heavy-duty liquors. That means the genes of laughter and happiness are becoming really thin. And we're approaching the idea of laughter and joy from a serious deficit. And that's why we need the substitute of liquor in order to make that happen. That being said, the fundamental piece in there is for us to look at ourselves from the perspective of the amount of joy that we're willing to bring into our life. How much of that is in there? And to raise the question that puts a balance between what we are able to achieve and the amount of joy that accompanies the initiative towards that achievement. Are our failures due to a rather pathological seriousness given to life? Or are the things we fail to achieve associated with a deficit in joy due to too many repression and repressed things within us that are blocking the channel of joy? I mean, these are pertinent questions that we should ask ourselves. You know, we can't just make a laconic statement saying that, well, there's not enough joy, there's not enough laughter, there's not enough playfulness. We have to associate that with our productivity, with our capacity to muster healing and transformation in our culture, and see whether it is not the reason why we have an industry called entertainment. So in other words, in order for you to laugh, you know, somebody must be over there making a fool of himself so that you can giggle a couple of times. The point in there is that it's revelatory of a deep pathology that is keeping us away from each other, keeping us away from the healing powers of joy and laughter. You know. Anyway, I don't want to be too serious around.